A rural deputy slaps a young black woman on a dusty road, but he has no idea her father is his new boss. The deputy's words cut through the humid Georgia air, sharp and ugly. "This ain't your land to be messing with, girl," Deputy Miller sneered, his hand resting on his hip. Maria stood her ground, shovel held tight in her calloused hands. "I work this land. It belongs to my family." The sharp crack of his hand across her cheek echoed in the oppressive silence, a sound that sealed his fate without him even knowing it. This was Oak Valley County, a place where the sun baked the earth hard, and justice was often just as unforgiving. For 24-year-old Maria Evans, this land was her inheritance, paid for with the sweat of her father and grandfather. The problem wasn't just the slap, it was a symptom of a deeper rot in Oak Valley, where power was used to crush, not protect. What Miller couldn't know was that this single act of violence had set in motion a chain of events that would unravel his entire world. A quiet phone call would be made, a secret file would be opened, and a father's silent promise for justice would become a storm. But when justice comes from a place of personal vengeance, can it truly heal a wound, or does it just create a new one? Before we continue this story, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part, and comment below with your city and the word justice to show your support for Maria. The day had started like any other. The Georgia sun was a relentless weight, pressing down on the fields and turning the air into a thick, shimmering haze. Maria Evans was mending a stretch of fence along the property line, her movements efficient and practiced. The wire was old and rusted, but it was all they had. Every so often she'd pause, wipe the sweat from her brow with the back of her glove, and stare out at the acres of dry soil her family called home. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. The distant sound of a car engine grew louder, and she squinted as a county sheriff's vehicle kicked up a cloud of red dust on the dirt road. It slowed and then stopped right beside her. Deputy Miller killed the engine, the sudden silence making the buzzing of insects seem deafening. He got out of the car with a slow, deliberate arrogance, adjusting his sunglasses as he surveyed her. He was a man who enjoyed the weight of his uniform, the power it gave him in these forgotten parts of the county. "What do you think you're doing out here?" he asked. His voice was a low drawl, coated in condescension. Maria didn't stop her work. "Fixing the fence," she said, her voice even. "Cattle have been getting through." Miller walked closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. He gestured vaguely at the land. "This property line has been in dispute for years. You Evans folk are always pushing boundaries." "There's no dispute," Maria stated plainly, finally looking up to meet his gaze. "The survey markers are clear. This is our land. My father worked it, and his father before him." A smirk played on Miller's lips. He took off his sunglasses, revealing a pair of cold, pale eyes. "History doesn't mean much around here, girl. What matters is who's in charge now. And your kind doesn't own anything without permission." The insult hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Maria's grip tightened on her shovel. Across the road she could see old Mr. Henderson on his porch, rocking in his chair. He had stopped rocking. He was watching. A pickup truck slowed as it passed, the family inside staring before the driver sped up and drove away. They were all witnesses. They were all afraid. "We don't need your permission to work our own property," Maria said, her voice low and firm. That was when he moved. It was fast, almost casual. He stepped forward and struck her across the face. The slap was hard enough to make her head snap to the side, the sting immediate and sharp. For a moment, there was only the ringing in her ears. She slowly turned her head back, her eyes locking onto his. There was no fear in them, only a cold, burning fire. Miller seemed satisfied with her silence. He put his sunglasses back on, a final act of dismissal. "Stay on your side of the road," he warned. "Next time it'll be more than a slap." He got back in his car, started the engine and drove off, leaving her standing alone in a cloud of his dust. Maria didn't move for a long time. She felt the eyes of Mr. Henderson on her, but he didn't move from his porch. The other car was long gone. The humiliation was a physical weight, heavier than the sun. But beneath it, something else was taking root, a resolve as hard and unyielding as the baked earth beneath her feet. She took a deep, shuddering breath, then bent down, picked up her roll of wire, and finished mending the fence. An hour later, she pulled her family's old, battered Ford truck up to the small farmhouse. Her father, Joseph Evans, was on the porch, methodically cleaning a hunting rifle. He was a quiet man, his face a road map of long years spent under the sun. He was respected in the community for his calm demeanor and steady hand. He looked up as she got out of the truck, and his movements stilled. He saw the red mark blooming on her cheek before she said a single word. The air on the porch grew heavy. He carefully set the rifle down, his eyes never leaving her face. They were dark, patient eyes, but right now they held a dangerous light. "Who?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the force of a command. "Miller," Maria said, her own voice hoarse. Joseph nodded slowly, a single deliberate movement. He didn't rage. He didn't yell. His control was far more frightening. He stood up, his tall frame blocking the doorway. "Go inside," he said softly. "Wash your face. I'll handle it." Maria knew that tone. It was the one he used when a decision had been made. A line had been crossed, and there was no going back. She went inside without another word. Joseph watched her go, then pulled his phone from his pocket. He walked to the edge of the porch, turning his back to the house. He dialed a number from memory. "This is Evans," he said into the phone, his voice transformed. It was no longer the voice of a simple farmer. It was crisp, authoritative, and cold as steel. "Yes, the transfer is official as of this morning. No, the public announcement isn't for another week. Keep it that way. I need the complete service file for a Deputy Frank Miller. Everything, every complaint, every commendation, every psych evaluation. I want it on my desk by tonight." He paused, listening. "I don't care who you have to call. Make it happen." He hung up without saying goodbye, his thumb pressing the screen until it went dark. He looked out over his land, the land his daughter had just been assaulted on, and his expression was unreadable, like stone. Deputy Miller had made a mistake. He thought he had slapped a powerless farm girl. He had no idea he had just declared war on the new chief of the county police. Deputy Frank Miller sat in a cracked vinyl booth at the Dusty Spoon Diner, a greasy film on the table reflecting the buzzing fluorescent lights. He swirled the last of his coffee in a stained mug, the picture of a man at ease. Across from him, Deputy Calloway, younger and eager to please, shoveled a forkful of pie into his mouth. "So you just left her there?" Calloway asked, his mouth full. Miller grunted, a smirk playing on his lips. "What was I gonna do? Arrest her for trespassing on her own land? Just had to remind her of the local customs?" He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Old Joseph Evans thinks that patch of dirt makes him king of the county. Someone's got to put his girl in her place." "Heard he's a tough old bird," Calloway offered, trying to sound knowledgeable. "Keeps to himself, mostly." "He's nothing," Miller said, waving a dismissive hand. "Just another farmer with a chip on his shoulder. They all get loud until you show them who wears the badge. She'll keep her mouth shut. They always do." He leaned back, stretching his arms. "Besides, Sheriff Jones always had my back. Said I was good at community relations. The new chief, whoever he is, will learn the same thing. This county runs on a certain understanding." Calloway nodded, not quite grasping the full meaning, but understanding the tone. In Oak Valley, the law was whatever men like Miller said it was. Miller threw a few crumpled bills on the table. "Let's roll. Got a long night of keeping the peace." As they walked out, he didn't notice Mr. Henderson sitting in a corner booth, nursing a glass of water, his old eyes watching their every move. Hours later, the moon cast long shadows across the Evans farm. A single light burned in the small study at the back of the house. Joseph sat at a heavy oak desk, the room smelling of old books and gun oil. In front of him lay a thick manila folder, delivered an hour earlier by a trusted sergeant who had driven from the state capital without asking questions. The file was stamped confidential. The name on the tab read Miller. Frank T. Joseph read with an unnerving stillness, his face betraying no emotion. He wasn't reading as a father. He was reading as a commander dissecting an enemy's weakness. Page after page painted the same picture. Miller wasn't just a bad cop. He was a predator who used his badge as a shield. There were 4 excessive force complaints in the last 5 years, all filed by Black or Hispanic residents, all dismissed for lack of evidence. There was a complaint from a young woman who claimed Miller pulled her over late at night and made inappropriate comments. The report concluded she had misinterpreted his professional demeanor. Another incident involved a dispute over livestock with the Henderson family. Miller had sided with a wealthy landowner who had ties to the previous sheriff, resulting in the Hendersons losing acres of grazing land. The common thread was Captain Roberts, Miller's direct supervisor, who signed off on every dismissal, often with a glowing recommendation for Miller's proactive policing. Joseph paused, his finger tracing a line in one of the reports. A name, Samuel Washington. A young man arrested by Miller for disorderly conduct. He claimed Miller had used a racial slur and thrown him against his patrol car, causing a dislocated shoulder. There was a witness, a neighbor. But the witness later recanted their statement. The case was dropped. Joseph knew that fear had a way of changing stories in Oak Valley. He heard a soft footfall and looked up. Maria stood in the doorway, a glass of water in her hand. The bruise on her cheek was a dark purple under the dim light. She didn't look broken. She looked angry. "You're going to get him fired, aren't you?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it had an edge. Joseph closed the file. He didn't want her to see the sordid details, the proof that her humiliation was just one link in a long, rusty chain. "Firing him is not enough," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You cut the head off a snake, another one grows back. You have to burn the nest." She looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. She knew her father had recently accepted a new job, a significant promotion he had been vague about. He had only said it was an administrative role with the state police, a way to finish his career behind a desk. He had kept the truth from her, from everyone, for his own safety and for the element of surprise. Now she saw the truth. This wasn't just an administrator. This was a man preparing for battle. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What's necessary?" he replied. He stood up and walked over to her, his large hand gently touching her unbruised cheek. "This land is ours. This home is ours. No one has the right to make us feel like strangers here. Go get some sleep." His calmness was more reassuring than any promise of violence. Maria nodded and left him to his work. Joseph returned to the desk. He picked up his phone and dialed the same number as before. Sergeant Davis answered on the first ring. "Davis," Joseph said, his tone all business. "I've reviewed the file. I need you to do 2 things for me. First, quietly pull the evidence logs and incident reports for the Samuel Washington arrest from 2 years ago. I want to know who logged his witness's recanted statement. I also want to know who the duty officer was that night besides Miller. Sir, that file is sealed. Reopening it will raise flags, especially with Captain Roberts." "I'm not reopening it," Joseph corrected him. "I'm reviewing a closed case for procedural integrity. There's a difference. Be discreet." "Understood, sir." "What's the second thing?" Joseph looked out the window at the dark fields his family had bled for. "I need a list of every property dispute Deputy Miller has responded to in the last 10 years. Cross-reference it with land deeds and ownership transfers. I'm looking for a pattern." He paused. "Start with the Henderson farm. I have a feeling Miller isn't just a bully. He's a tool, and I'm going to find out who's holding the handle." The next morning, the sun had barely crested the horizon when Maria steered her truck down another dusty road, this one leading to the Henderson farm. She wasn't going to wait for her father to handle things. This was her fight too. She found Mr. Henderson feeding his chickens, his movements slow and methodical. He looked up as she approached, his face a mask of weary resignation. He knew why she was there. "Morning, Maria," he said, not stopping his work. "Mr. Henderson, you saw what he did yesterday?" It wasn't a question. He finally stopped and turned to her, his eyes scanning the empty road behind her as if expecting trouble. "I saw a deputy talking to you, that's all." "You and I both know you saw more than that," Maria pressed, her voice steady. "He hit me, on my own land, just like he threatened you off yours." The old man's shoulders slumped. He walked over to a water pump and began working the handle, the rusty squeal filling the silence. "That was a business dispute, all legal and on the level. Was it legal when he followed your son home from town 3 nights in a row? Was it on the level when your prize bull turned up sick right before you had to sell the land for a fraction of what it was worth?" Henderson froze, his hand tight on the pump handle. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a fear so old it was part of him. "You're playing with fire, girl. These people, they don't just take your land, they take everything. You have a good father, a respected man. Don't bring this kind of trouble to his door." "This trouble is already at his door. It's at all our doors," Maria insisted. "If we don't stand up, who will? I'm not asking you to testify in court. Just tell me what you know. Tell my father." He shook his head, a final sad refusal. "Some things are better left buried. You go on home now. I've got work to do." He turned his back on her, a clear dismissal. Maria stood there for a moment, the frustration a bitter taste in her mouth. He wasn't just scared, he was broken. As she walked back to her truck, she realized her father was right. This wasn't about one bad cop, it was a disease that had infected the whole county. Meanwhile, Joseph sat in his study, the phone pressed to his ear. Sergeant Davis was on the other end, his voice low and urgent. "Chief, you were right. It's a clear pattern. Over the last 8 years, 6 families, all minority landowners with property adjacent to the old state preserve, have sold their land after a series of escalating incidents. Vandalism, livestock issues, aggressive traffic stops. Deputy Miller was the responding officer in over 90% of those incidents." "And who bought the land?" Joseph asked, his voice flat. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Every single parcel was purchased, well below market value, by a shell corporation called Oak Valley Development Group. Joseph's knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. "Who's behind it?" "That's the core of it, sir," Davis said. "The registered agent is a man named Thomas Patterson. Took some digging, but Patterson is Captain Roberts' brother-in-law." The final piece clicked into place. It was a coordinated shakedown operation, using the color of law as a weapon. Miller was the muscle, the enforcer who created the problems. Roberts was the architect, the one who made the problems go away and facilitated the sale. "There's more, Chief," Davis continued. "The Samuel Washington case. The witness who recanted. His name is David Chen, a store owner. According to the log, his revised statement was taken at 11 p.m. at his home. The officer who took the statement wasn't Miller's partner. It was Captain Roberts himself." "Off the books," Joseph murmured. "He went himself to ensure it was handled. He made himself a material witness and a co-conspirator," Davis confirmed. "He's dirty, sir. All the way." "Thank you, Sergeant. That's all I need for now. Stand by for instructions." Joseph hung up the phone. The quiet fury in him had solidified into a cold, hard plan. At the Oak Valley Sheriff's Department, Captain Roberts stared out his office window. He had a bad feeling he couldn't shake. The old sheriff, Jones, had been predictable, manageable. This new chief, whose name hadn't even been announced yet, was a ghost, a phantom pulling strings from the capital. He buzzed his intercom. "Send in Miller." A minute later, Miller sauntered in, looking smug. "What's up, Cap?" Roberts gestured to the chair. "Shut the door." Miller's smirk faded. He did as he was told. "I got a call this morning," Roberts said, his voice low. "About those state-level inquiries. They didn't just pull your complaint file. They pulled land transfer records from the county clerk's office. They pulled the entire Washington case file. Miller shifted in his seat. So, it's a closed case. Everything is buttoned up. Don't be an idiot, Frank, Robert snapped. Nothing is ever buttoned up. It just lies dormant. This new chief, whoever he is digging. It means he's looking for something. I need you to tell me if you've done anything stupid lately. Miller thought of the girl on the side of the road, Maria Evans. He thought about the satisfying crack of his hand against her skin. It was nothing, a nobody. No, just regular business, kept a few folks in line. Robert stared at him, his eyes like chips of ice. Your regular business is what I'm worried about. From this moment on, you are a model deputy. You write parking tickets and help old ladies cross the street. You do not engage. You do not escalate. You do not do anything that will draw attention. Are we clear? Crystal, Miller said, though his pride was stung. Good. Now get out. Back at the farm, Joseph watched Maria get out of her truck, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She walked up to the porch and looked at him. Henderson won't talk, she said. He's too scared. Joseph nodded. He will, he said with absolute certainty. They all will. They just need to know the man asking the questions is more dangerous to their enemies than they are to him. He pulled out his phone. He knew what he had to do. The time for secrets and shadows was over. It was time for the storm to make landfall. He dialed Sergeant Davis. Davis, the official announcement. Move it up. Sir? Effective immediately. And schedule a full mandatory command staff briefing for tomorrow morning, 800 sharp. He paused, his voice dropping, becoming as hard as iron. I want Captain Roberts and Deputy Miller sitting in the front row. It's time they finally meet their new chief. An email alert pinged across every computer and department-issued phone in the Oak Valley Sheriff's Department. The subject line was stark. Official announcement, appointment of new chief of police. Inside, a brief formal memo from the state commissioner announced that, effective immediately, the new chief was Joseph Evans. A mandatory staff briefing was scheduled for 0800 the following morning. The name meant nothing to most of the deputies. It was just a name. They gossiped in the break room, speculating about whether he was an outsider from the city or a state bureaucrat being put out to pasture. In his office, Captain Roberts read the email 3 times. Evans, Joseph Evans. The name was common, but it still sent a cold spike of unease through him. He pulled up the county resident database, his screen filled with a dozen Joseph Evanses. Then he filtered by landowners. The list shrank. He clicked on the file for a farmer who owned 100 acres out on Route 4. A photo appeared on the screen. A stern-faced black man in his late 50s. Robert stared at it, a knot tightening in his stomach. It couldn't be. A farmer? A man with no listed law enforcement background in the local system? It had to be a coincidence, but the unease remained. Deputy Miller saw the email and scoffed. Joseph Evans, he said to Calloway as they checked out their patrol car. Sounds like some pencil pusher they dug up. Probably won't even know which end of a gun the bullet comes out of. Maybe he'll be an easy boss, Calloway offered hopefully. They're all the same, Miller grumbled, slamming the car door. Just wants us to fill out our paperwork. He'll learn soon enough who really runs this county. His mind wasn't on the new chief. It was on Robert's warning. Being told to lie low felt like being put in a cage, and it infuriated him. Maria couldn't sit still. Her father's plan was in motion, but it felt distant, abstract. The bruise on her cheek was a constant, throbbing reminder of her own helplessness. She needed to do something. She went into her father's study, where he had left the files on his desk. She opened the folder for the Samuel Washington case. She scanned the details until she found the witness's name and address. David Chen, owner of Chen's Market on the edge of town. 15 minutes later, she pushed open the door to the small, dusty convenience store. A little bell chimed. A thin, middle-aged man behind the counter looked up, his expression wary. He was wiping down the counter with a rag, a motion he didn't stop as she approached. Mr. Chen, Maria asked. His eyes darted to the door, then back to her. Can I help you? My name is Maria Evans. I wanted to ask you about an incident from 2 years ago, about Samuel Washington. The rag in David Chen's hand stopped moving. All the color drained from his face. He looked past her toward the window, his gaze unfocused and terrified. I don't know what you're talking about. That was a long time ago. The case is closed. I know it's closed, Maria said, keeping her voice soft. I know you gave a statement, and then you changed it. He finally looked at her, his eyes pleading. Please, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You need to leave. You don't understand. I think I do, she said, her own voice hardening with resolve. Captain Roberts paid you a visit, didn't he? Late at night, when you were alone. Chen flinched as if she'd struck him. He leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the counter. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten me. Not really. He just talked. He talked about how hard it is to run a small business, how a person could lose their license over a small paperwork error, how fires can start from faulty wiring. He talked about my daughter, who was applying to the state university. He said he knew people on the admissions board. He said he could be a good friend or a bad enemy. Then he put a new statement in front of me and a pen in my hand. He looked down at his own trembling hands. I have a family to protect. I did what I had to do. Maria's anger was a cold, sharp point in her chest. This was the system her father was fighting, not just violence, but the quiet, suffocating poison of fear. My father is Joseph Evans, she said, her words deliberate. He is the new chief of police. Things are going to change. When he asks you to tell the truth, I hope you'll have the courage to do it. She turned and walked out, the bell chiming her exit. She didn't know if she had helped or just made things worse for him, but she had planted a seed. Now she just had to hope it would grow. That evening, Deputy Miller was on patrol, stewing in his own resentment. Roberts's orders echoed in his head. You do not engage, you do not escalate. It felt like a leash. He drove down the familiar dirt roads, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He passed the Henderson farm. He saw the old man on his porch, rocking in his chair. An idea, ugly and impulsive, took root. Roberts had told him not to draw attention, but a quiet, friendly visit wasn't drawing attention. It was just community relations. He pulled his cruiser into Henderson's long driveway, the gravel crunching under his tires. He killed the engine and got out, leaving the lights off. The rocking chair on the porch stopped moving. Miller walked slowly toward the house, his shadow long and menacing in the twilight. He didn't need to say a word. His presence was the message. He was reminding Henderson and himself who was really in charge. The next morning at 0755, the main briefing room at the sheriff's department was packed. The air was thick with tension and stale coffee. Every command officer was present. Captain Roberts sat in the center of the front row, his uniform immaculate, his expression a carefully constructed mask of professional calm. Beside him, Deputy Miller slumped in his chair, looking bored and annoyed at being pulled off the road for a mandatory meeting. He nudged Roberts. "Get a load of this," he whispered, gesturing to the empty podium. "Probably gonna give us a lecture on diversity and inclusion." Roberts didn't answer. He kept his eyes fixed on the door at the side of the room. His gut was churning. The name Evans kept circling in his mind. At precisely 800, the side door opened. The room fell silent. A tall, powerfully built black man in a perfectly tailored chief's uniform walked in. He moved with an unnerving calm, his eyes sweeping across the room before landing on the front row. Deputy Miller's smirk froze on his face. His blood ran cold. He recognized the man. He'd seen him 100 times on a tractor in a feed store on the porch of the farmhouse down Route 4. It was Joseph Evans, Maria's father. Roberts felt the floor drop out from under him. The coincidence wasn't a coincidence at all. It was a perfectly aimed bullet. Joseph stepped up to the podium. He didn't smile. His gaze was like granite as he looked directly at the two men in the front row. He leaned into the microphone. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm, clear, and carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. "I am your new chief, and we have a lot to discuss." The silence in the briefing room was absolute. It was a thick, heavy thing, broken only by the low hum of the air conditioner. Deputy Miller's face had gone from a smug pink to a pasty, sickly white. A bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. He looked at the man at the podium, then glanced at Roberts, his eyes wide with panic. Captain Roberts remained perfectly still, but the composure was a facade. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscle bunched, and his eyes, fixed on Joseph, were filled with the frantic calculations of a cornered animal. Joseph let the silence hang for a beat longer, a tool of intimidation more potent than any shout. His gaze swept over the room, making eye contact with lieutenants and sergeants, men and women who had operated under the old regime. He was assessing them, letting them know they were all under his microscope now. "For those of you who don't know me," Joseph began, his voice unchanged, "I've lived in this county my whole life. I've worked the land. I know its roads, its people, and its problems." He paused, his eyes settling back on Miller and Roberts. "A farmer learns a few things. He learns that you can't have a healthy crop if you have a rot in the soil. He learns that you have to pull the weeds out by the root before they choke out everything good." A nervous cough broke the silence from the back of the room. "My tenure here begins today," Joseph continued, his tone becoming sharper, harder. "And it begins with a new policy, absolute accountability. There will be no more buried complaints, no more professional courtesies that allow bullies to hide behind a badge. This department will serve and protect every single citizen of Oak Valley County, not just the ones with money or influence." He picked up a thin file from the podium. He didn't open it. He just held it. "I've spent the last 48 hours reviewing the operational history of this department. I've read files that should have resulted in dismissals. I've seen patterns of harassment and intimidation that are a disgrace to the uniform. This ends now." He looked directly at Roberts. "Captain, your leadership has been found wanting." Then his gaze shifted to Miller. "Deputy, your conduct has been found to be a cancer." Miller finally found his voice, a choked, incredulous whisper. You can't. Sergeant Davis." Joseph's voice boomed, cutting Miller off. Davis, who had been standing by the side door, stepped forward. He was flanked by another senior sergeant Joseph had brought with him from the state command. They were both large, imposing men, their faces unreadable. "Captain Roberts, Deputy Miller," Joseph commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You are both suspended, effective immediately, pending a full internal affairs investigation. Place your badge and service weapon on the table in front of you." For a second, nobody moved. The entire room held its breath. It was a direct challenge to the established order. Roberts, ever the politician, slowly, deliberately began to unclip his badge. He was buying time, thinking. Miller, however, was a creature of pure ego. He just stared, his mouth hanging open. "Now, Deputy," Joseph said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. Davis and the other sergeant took a step forward. That was all it took. The threat of physical removal, of public humiliation, finally broke through Miller's shock. With trembling hands, he fumbled with his badge, the pin pricking his finger. He unbuckled his duty belt, the heavy leather and holstered pistol clattering onto the table with a sound of finality. Roberts placed his own items on the table with a quiet, controlled click. "Sergeants, escort these men to their lockers to collect their personal effects. They are then to be escorted off the property. Their access is revoked," Joseph ordered. As Davis led them toward the door, Miller turned back, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This is because of my daughter, isn't it?" He spat at Joseph. "This is personal." Joseph met his gaze without flinching. "Every case of a citizen being abused by one of our own is personal to me, Miller. You're just the first one to find that out." He was led out, still sputtering, while Roberts walked in a stony, dignified silence, his mind already plotting legal challenges and calling in favors. The door clicked shut behind them. Joseph turned back to the stunned room. Let me be clear. The investigation into Roberts and Miller is just the beginning. I will be conducting a full audit of this department, top to bottom. If you have done your job with integrity, you have nothing to fear. If you have been complicit, if you have looked the other way, I suggest you come to my office and talk to me before I come looking for you. He scanned their faces one last time. That's all. Dismissed. The officers filed out in a stunned silence, the usual post-briefing chatter completely absent. The balance of power in Oak Valley had just been shattered, and they were all standing on the shifting pieces. Joseph walked to the chief's office, formerly Sheriff Jones's office. It was large, with a window overlooking the town square. He sat behind the heavy desk and picked up the phone. He didn't call the state commissioner or the district attorney. He dialed a local number. On a quiet farm miles away, a phone rang. Mr. Henderson picked it up warily. Hello? Mr. Henderson, this is Joseph Evans. There was a moment of silence. Joseph, what's going on? I heard the whole town is talking. It's Chief Evans now, Joseph said, his voice calm and steady. I'm calling about the visit you had from Deputy Miller last night. I'm calling about your land. I'm calling about everything. I want you to come down to my office and give a formal statement. I can promise you, you have nothing to be afraid of anymore. He could hear the old man take a shaky breath on the other end of the line. Are you sure, Joseph? Roberts has long arms. His arms just got a lot shorter, Joseph replied. I'll be waiting for you. He hung up and immediately dialed another number. In a small market on the edge of town, David Chen answered. Mr. Chen, Joseph said, this is Chief Evans. It's time for us to talk about what really happened to Samuel Washington. Frank Miller stood on the sidewalk outside the sheriff's department, the midday sun beating down on him. The world felt tilted, unreal. Just an hour ago, he was the law in Oak Valley. Now, he was a civilian with a box of personal effects in his hands. The humiliation burned hotter than the Georgia asphalt. He watched Sergeant Davis's patrol car pull away, leaving him stranded. He looked across the street at Roberts, who was already in his pristine sedan, his phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of cold fury. Roberts didn't even glance in Miller's direction. He was already a liability, an asset being discarded. Miller's rage, having no other target, began to curdle into a bitter, self-destructive poison. He dumped the box of photos and cheap memorabilia into a nearby trash can, the sound of a cracking picture frame barely registering. He needed a drink. He stormed down the block to the Rusty Keg Saloon, a dark, windowless bar that smelled of stale beer and regret. He slammed himself onto a bar stool. Whiskey! He barked at the bartender, a man who had offered him free drinks for years. Today, the bartender just nodded warily and poured a shot. Miller downed it in one gulp and slammed the glass back on the counter. Another. A few of the bar's regulars, men who usually clapped him on the back, now studied their drinks with intense focus, avoiding his eyes. The news had already spread through the town's nervous system like wildfire. Can you believe it? Miller slurred to the man next to him, who immediately flinched. That farmer, Evans, he thinks he can just walk in and take over. It's a damn coup. The man mumbled something non-committal and slid off his stool, moving to a booth in the far corner. Miller was alone, the space around him an invisible bubble of toxicity. He was no longer a man to be feared, just a man to be avoided. The loss of power was a physical amputation, and he was bleeding out. Across town, Captain Roberts was not bleeding. He was strategizing. He sat in his parked car 2 blocks from the station, his engine off. "No, you listen to me," he said into his phone, his voice a low, controlled hiss. His lawyer was on the other end. "This is a politically motivated dismissal, a personal vendetta. Evans's daughter was involved in a minor field incident with my deputy. Evans is using his new position to retaliate. It's a clear abuse of power." He listened for a moment. "I don't care what internal review says. We file for wrongful termination. We file a civil suit against Evans personally for defamation. We leak this to the press. We paint him as an unstable, vengeful amateur who's unfit for command. Drown him in paperwork and bad press before he even gets his feet wet." He paused. "And call my brother-in-law. Tell Patterson the Oak Valley Development Group is going dormant. All assets frozen. No transactions, no calls, nothing. We go to ground until we see how this plays out." He hung up, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Joseph Evans had won the first battle, but Roberts was preparing for a war. An hour later, a dusty 20-year-old pickup truck pulled into the parking lot of the sheriff's department. Mr. Henderson killed the engine and sat for a long moment, his gnarled hands gripping the steering wheel. This was the building he had avoided his entire life, a place where men like him went in and never came out the same. He took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the entrance. Joseph met him in the lobby himself, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Henderson." Henderson shook it, his grip surprisingly firm. "Never thought I'd see this day, Joseph. Never thought I'd be willing to walk in here." Joseph led him to his office, bypassing the formal interview rooms. He poured them both a glass of water. "I'm not going to record this yet," Joseph said, sitting across from him. "First, I just want you to tell me your story, everything Miller and Roberts did, from the beginning." And so, the old farmer began to talk. The words came out in a trickle at first, then a steady stream. He spoke of Miller's constant patrols past his house. He spoke of a citation for a broken taillight that cost him hundreds. He spoke of the night his prize bull got sick from a poison that the vet couldn't identify. He spoke of Roberts visiting him, talking smoothly about how unfortunate it all was, and mentioning that a development group was offering a fair price for his troublesome land. As he spoke, years of fear and silence began to fall away, replaced by a quiet, righteous anger. While Henderson was giving his statement, Maria drove into town. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a mottled yellow and purple, but she wore it like a medal. She saw the change immediately. People weren't hiding. They were standing on sidewalks, talking in hushed but excited groups. They saw her truck, and they didn't look away in fear. They nodded. Some even offered a small, tentative smile. They knew whose father had just cleaned house. She parked in front of Chen's market. She saw him through the glass, standing behind his counter, looking out at the street. He saw her, and for a moment, the old fear was back in his eyes. But then he saw the nods from his neighbors. He saw the new atmosphere in the air. He took a deep breath, unlocked his door, and flipped the open sign to closed. He walked out onto the sidewalk, meeting Maria halfway. "Your father called me," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know," Maria replied. "Are you going to talk to him?" Chen looked down the street toward the sheriff's department. "For 2 years, I have been afraid every time a patrol car drives by. I have been afraid my daughter would not get into college. I have been afraid of a quiet knock on my door in the middle of the night." He looked back at Maria, and a new strength was in his eyes. "I am tired of being afraid." Their conversation was cut short by a roar of an engine. Frank Miller's pickup truck tore around the corner, screeching to a halt just feet from them. He stumbled out, reeking of whiskey. His face was blotchy and red, his eyes wild. "Well, well, well," he snarled, his eyes locking on Maria. "Look at you, holding court in the middle of the street. You think you've won, don't you?" Maria stood her ground. Chen took a step back, but he didn't run. "It's over, Miller," Maria said, her voice cold and even. "Go home. This is my home," he roared, taking a clumsy step toward her. "You and your daddy don't get to take it from me." He pointed a shaking finger in her face. "You're nothing, just a girl who got what she deserved." "Is that so?" a quiet voice said. Deputy Calloway had stepped out of the diner across the street. He had seen the whole thing. He walked toward them, his hand not on his weapon, but held out in a placating gesture. "Frank, that's enough. Get in your truck and go sleep it off." Miller spun on him. "You too, Calloway, sucking up to the new boss already? I thought you were my partner." "You're not a cop anymore, Frank," Calloway said, his voice firm, all traces of his former eagerness gone. He was choosing a side. "You're just a drunk causing a public disturbance. Now I'm asking you one last time as a courtesy. Go home." Miller looked from Calloway's steady gaze to Maria's unflinching one, to David Chen, who was now standing beside her, no longer afraid. He looked at the faces in the windows of the shops, all watching him. He wasn't a symbol of power anymore. He was a spectacle. Defeated, he let out a guttural cry of frustration, stumbled back to his truck, and sped off, his tires squealing in protest. Calloway turned to Maria. "Are you all right, ma'am?" It was the first time he had ever called her that. "I'm fine, Deputy," she said. A new chapter had just begun in Oak Valley. The door to Joseph's office opened and closed with a steady rhythm for the rest of the day. First came Mr. Henderson, his voice growing stronger with every detail he recounted for the official record. Then came David Chen, who brought with him the original handwritten statement he had been forced to sign by Roberts, a statement he had secretly kept. He laid it on Joseph's desk, like a surrendered weapon. After them, a slow but steady trickle of others began. A Hispanic woman whose husband had been arrested by Miller on a fabricated charge after they refused to sell a small parcel of land. An elderly black man who had been a witness to one of Miller's violent arrests and was told by Roberts to mind his own business if he knew what was good for him. Each story was a piece of a larger, uglier puzzle. Joseph listened to them all, his expression unchanging. But Sergeant Davis, taking notes in the corner, saw the cold fire in his chief's eyes burn a little hotter with each new testimony. This wasn't just about assault or witness tampering anymore. This was a criminal conspiracy case for racketeering, built on years of systemic abuse. By late afternoon, Joseph sat alone, the signed affidavits stacked neatly on his desk. His phone buzzed. It was Sergeant Davis from the front desk. "Chief, you have a visitor, a lawyer. Says he's representing Mr. Roberts." "Send him in," Joseph said without hesitation. The lawyer was exactly what Joseph expected. Expensive suit, polished shoes, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He placed a slim leather briefcase on the desk and opened it. "Chief Evans," he began, his voice smooth as silk. "I am here on behalf of my client, Captain Roberts, to inform you that we will be filing a civil suit against you and this department for wrongful termination, defamation of character, and creating a hostile work environment." Joseph leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped behind his head. He looked at the lawyer, then at the stack of affidavits on his desk. He didn't say a word. The lawyer's smile faltered slightly. "My client maintains his innocence and believes he is the target of a personal vendetta stemming from a routine interaction between your daughter and one of his deputies. We are prepared to take this to the press." Joseph finally leaned forward, his calm demeanor more unnerving than any outburst. "You tell your client that I have a stack of sworn statements on my desk that paint a picture of extortion, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. You tell him that his brother-in-law's shell corporation is already under financial review by the state, and you tell him that the press will be the least of his worries." He stood up, a clear dismissal. "Now get out of my office." The lawyer gathered his papers, his professional composure rattled. He left without another word. Joseph knew Roberts' strategy: create enough noise and legal chaos to discredit the investigation. But Joseph wasn't playing Roberts' game. He was playing his own. That evening, Maria sat on the porch with her father. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the fields. The air was calm, but the day's events hung between them. "Roberts is suing," Joseph said, not as a complaint, but as a statement of fact. "Are you worried?" Maria asked. "No," he said. "A cornered snake will always strike. It's predictable." He looked at her, the fading light catching the last of the bruise on her cheek. "You did good, Maria. Talking to Henderson, to Chen. You gave them the courage to take the first step. They were the courageous ones, she said. I was just angry. Anger is a powerful tool if you know how to aim it, Joseph replied. But this isn't over. Henderson and Chen are just two. There were 6 families who lost their land. We need them to speak up. Roberts will try to isolate them, pay them off, or scare them back into silence. Maria looked out at the familiar landscape, at the property lines her family had fought to maintain for generations. She thought of the other families who had been pushed out, their histories erased for a shell corporation's profit. Her anger hadn't faded. It had focused. Then I'll go talk to them, she said. All of them. They won't trust a uniform, not yet. But they might trust me. They'll trust a neighbor. Joseph looked at his daughter and saw not a victim, but a leader. He nodded slowly. Be careful. The next day, while Maria tracked down the first of the displaced families, Deputy Calloway knocked on the chief's open office door. Chief, you wanted to see me? Calloway, come in. Close the door. Joseph gestured to the chair. I saw your report from yesterday, the incident with Miller in town. Calloway sat, his posture straight. Yes, sir. He was intoxicated and harassing your daughter and Mr. Chen. You de-escalated the situation professionally. You chose to enforce the law, not a personal loyalty. That's commendable, Joseph said. I need men like you. The truth is, I don't know who in this department I can trust. I need to know who was loyal to Roberts's corruption and who was just loyal to the uniform because they were too scared to be anything else. Calloway hesitated for a moment, then met the chief's gaze. Most of us are good cops, sir. We learned to keep our heads down. Miller was Roberts's guy. Everyone knew it. You crossed Miller, and Roberts would have you on desk duty in the middle of nowhere, reviewing cold cases for the rest of your career. Or worse, so we looked the other way. I'm not proud of it. Pride doesn't fix a broken system, Joseph said. Action does. I'm promoting Sergeant Davis to captain, and I'm creating a new internal affairs unit that reports directly to me. I want you on it. Calloway was stunned. Me, sir? I'm just a deputy. You're a deputy who stood up to his former partner in the middle of Main Street because it was the right thing to do. That's the only qualification I care about right now. Meanwhile, Frank Miller's world had shrunk to the size of a whiskey bottle. He sat in his dark, messy living room, the television flickering, ignored in the corner. His phone had been silent. Roberts wasn't calling. His so-called friends weren't calling. The rage and alcohol had burned away everything but a raw, desperate need to hit back. He couldn't hurt Joseph Evans. The man was untouchable. He couldn't hurt Roberts. The man had abandoned him, but he could hurt the people who had defied him. The ones who had caused all this. He grabbed his truck keys. His mind was a toxic fog, but one thought was crystal clear. David Chen, the little store owner who had dared to stand with Maria. The man who was probably singing like a canary to the new chief. Miller was going to remind him what happened to people who talked. He screeched to a halt in front of Chen's market. It was late. The store was closed, but a light was on in the back. Miller got out of his truck, a tire iron in his hand. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to break things. Starting with the front window, he raised the iron, the streetlights glinting off the metal, and swung. The crash of shattering glass echoed down the deserted Main Street. Inside the market, David Chen, who was in the back office tallying receipts, jumped to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knew that sound. He knew who it was for. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dial 911. Before he could press call, a second crash, louder than the first, came as Miller brought the tire iron down on the glass door, splintering it from its frame. Miller kicked the ruined door open and stormed inside, his face a mask of drunken fury. "Chen, you little rat! I know you're in here!" He swiped a display of candy bars off the counter, sending them scattering across the floor. He was a bull in a china shop, fueled by whiskey and a sense of profound, violent injustice. "You think you can ruin my life? You think you can talk to that farmer and get away with it?" From the back room, Chen could hear the destruction. He knew the police were on their way. But that felt like a lifetime from now. He looked around frantically. There was a heavy fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. It was his only chance. He grabbed it, his knuckles white, and flattened himself against the wall next to the doorway, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Miller kicked over a newspaper stand and advanced toward the back of the store. "Come on out, Chen. Let's talk about your statement," he roared, his voice thick with menace. He reached the doorway to the back office and peered into the darkness. It was the opening Chen needed. He swung the heavy metal cylinder with all his might, catching Miller squarely in the side of the knee. Miller screamed, a high-pitched sound of agony and surprise, and crumpled to the floor, the tire iron clattering away from his hand. Chen didn't hesitate. He backed away, keeping the extinguisher raised as Miller writhed on the ground, clutching his shattered knee. At that moment, the wail of sirens grew from a distant cry to a deafening roar. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt outside, their lights painting the inside of the store in strobing flashes of red and blue. Deputy Calloway was the first one through the door, his weapon drawn. He took in the scene in a split second, the shattered glass, the trashed store, Miller on the floor howling in pain, and a terrified but resolute David Chen holding a fire extinguisher. "Drop it, Chen!" Calloway commanded, his voice on autopilot. "He broke in! He was going to kill me!" Chen yelled, his voice cracking. Calloway's eyes flicked to the tire iron on the floor, then back to Miller. He holstered his weapon. "It's okay, Mr. Chen. You can put it down. We've got it from here." As other deputies cuffed a sobbing, pathetic Frank Miller, Calloway knelt beside Chen, who was now trembling uncontrollably, the adrenaline leaving his system. "You did the right thing," Calloway said quietly. "You protected yourself." The news of Miller's arrest for breaking and entering, vandalism and assault spread even faster than the news of his suspension. It was a pathetic, self-inflicted final nail in his coffin. For Roberts, it was a disaster. His star witness in any wrongful termination suit had just made himself a violent, unstable felon. The narrative of a dedicated officer being targeted by a vengeful chief was now impossible to sell. Meanwhile, Maria was 30 miles away, sitting at a small kitchen table in a cramped apartment. Across from her sat the Garcia family, a husband, wife, and their teenage son. They were one of the families who had lost their farm. "He did the same to us," Mr. Garcia said, his voice low. "Miller. He pulled my son over 3 times in 1 week. Said his taillight was out, but it wasn't. Gave him a ticket we couldn't afford. Then our well was contaminated. We couldn't prove anything, but we knew. Then Captain Roberts came to see us," Mrs. Garcia added, her hands twisting a napkin in her lap. "He was so polite, said he heard we were having some bad luck, said it was a shame. He told us a development group was buying up land in the area and made us an offer. It was low, but we were scared. We just wanted out. He took our home," their son said, his voice filled with a bitterness that was too old for his years. "My grandfather built that house." Maria listened, her heart aching for them. This was the real cost of the corruption. Not just lost money, but lost homes, lost legacies. "My father is the new chief now," she said, echoing the words she had spoken to Chen. "He's building a case against them, a real one. Your testimony could help put them away. It could help you get your land back." Mr. Garcia looked at his wife. The old fear was still there, but Maria saw something else too, a flicker of hope. "What you're asking, it's dangerous," he said. "Staying silent is more dangerous," Maria replied softly. "It's what they're counting on." Back in Oak Valley, Joseph was in his office with the newly promoted Captain Davis and Deputy Calloway. On the desk, spread out like a battle map, were property deeds, financial records from the Oak Valley Development Group, and the growing stack of witness statements. "Miller's rampage just handed us a gift," Davis said, pointing to a document. "With him charged with a violent felony, any credibility he had is gone. Roberts's civil suit is dead in the water." "It's more than that," Joseph said, his finger tracing a line connecting the Garcia property to the Henderson property and 4 others. They're all contiguous. They form a perfect unbroken parcel of land bordering the state preserve. They weren't just grabbing land, Calloway realized. They were assembling something. Exactly, Joseph confirmed. And I think I know what for. I had a friend at the State Planning Commission run a check. 6 months ago, a proposal was quietly floated to rezone the edge of the preserve for commercial development, a luxury resort and golf course. The proposal was sponsored by a state senator who just happens to be a cousin of the former Sheriff Jones. The final piece of the puzzle slammed into place. It was bigger than they imagined. It wasn't just 2 corrupt cops shaking down farmers. It was a multi-layered conspiracy reaching into state politics, with Roberts and Miller as the brutal groundwork crew for a multi-million-dollar land deal. Roberts won't be trying to get his job back, Joseph said, his voice grim. He'll be trying to disappear. Davis, get a warrant for the financial records of Sheriff Jones. Calloway, I want a discreet 24-hour surveillance team on Roberts. I want to know who he talks to, where he goes. He's going to get desperate, and he's going to make a mistake. The phone rang. It was Maria. "Dad," she said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. "The Garcias are in. They'll testify." "Good work, Maria," Joseph said. "Tell them to come in tomorrow. The dam is about to break." He hung up the phone and looked at his 2 officers. The tide had turned. They were no longer reacting. They were hunting, and the prey was finally in their sights. The surveillance on Roberts was a lesson in patience. For 2 days, he did nothing. He stayed home. His lawyer came and went, and he made calls that Calloway's team couldn't legally monitor. Roberts was disciplined, a creature of control. He knew he was being watched. He was waiting for them to make a mistake, but Joseph was just as patient. He knew Roberts couldn't stay grounded forever. The conspiracy was too big, with too many players who were getting nervous. The break came on the 3rd night. Calloway's voice was tight with excitement over the radio. "Chief, we have movement. Roberts is leaving his house. He's not in his usual car. It's a nondescript sedan. He's heading east on the old highway. Stay back, but don't lose him," Joseph commanded from his office, where he and Davis stood over a county map. "Where is he going, Calloway?" "No towns out that way, sir. Just abandoned farms and the old paper mill." Joseph's eyes narrowed. The old mill. It had been closed for a decade. A sprawling, isolated complex of rust and concrete. A perfect place for a meeting you didn't want anyone to see. He's meeting someone. He thinks he can lose you on those back roads. "He won't," Calloway said with grim confidence. Joseph made a decision. "Davis, get your tactical team ready. We're not going in, but I want a perimeter. Calloway, maintain visual but go dark on radio unless absolutely necessary. I don't want any stray signals tipping them off." Joseph grabbed his jacket. This was it, the mistake he had been waiting for. 20 minutes later, Calloway's voice crackled softly over the encrypted channel. "He's here. Pulled into the main warehouse of the old mill. There's another car already inside, a black town car, state government plates." Joseph, parked a half-mile away with Davis, felt a surge of adrenaline. "Hold your position. I want to see who he's meeting." Inside the cavernous, dusty warehouse, 2 beams of headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating dancing dust motes. Roberts got out of his car and walked into the space between the vehicles. A portly, well-dressed man emerged from the town car. It was State Senator Thompson, Sheriff Jones's cousin. "You have a lot of nerve calling me here, Mark," the senator hissed, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Do you know the kind of risk I'm taking? We have a problem bigger than your re-election campaign," Roberts shot back, his usual calm cracking under the pressure. "Evans has everything, the land deeds, the Shell Corporation. Miller got himself arrested. He's got witnesses crawling out of the woodwork. The whole deal is about to blow up." Thompson paled. "How much does he know? Does he know about me?" "He knows about the rezoning proposal," Roberts said. "It's only a matter of time before he connects it to you and Jones. We're all going down unless we shut this down now. What do you suggest we do?" the senator asked, his voice trembling. "He's the chief of police." "He's one man," Roberts said, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "A farmer playing cop. He has a daughter. He has a farm. He has weaknesses. We can apply a different kind of pressure, something that makes a few dead cows and a false arrest look like a parking ticket." Before the senator could respond, a third voice cut through the darkness, amplified by a bullhorn. "State Senator Thompson, Captain Mark Roberts, this is Chief Evans of the Oak Valley Police Department. You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and racketeering." The two men froze, their faces caught in the sudden glare of a dozen high-powered spotlights. Patrol cars, which had moved into position silently, now blocked every exit. Roberts and Thompson were trapped in a cage of light. Roberts's hand instinctively went to his hip for a gun that was no longer there. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He had been so careful, so meticulous. He had underestimated the farmer. Senator Thompson, on the other hand, completely fell apart. "It wasn't me, it was Jones. It was all his idea," he babbled, his hands raised in surrender. "I'm a public servant, Roberts, he's the criminal." Joseph walked slowly out of the darkness, flanked by Davis and Calloway. He didn't look at the blubbering senator. His eyes were locked on Roberts. "You were right about one thing, Roberts," Joseph said, his voice cold and clear. "I do have weaknesses, my daughter, my farm, my community. But you made a mistake. You thought they were weaknesses. They're not. They're the reason I'm standing here right now." He gestured to Calloway. "Cuff them." As Calloway put the cuffs on a silent, seething Roberts, the ex-captain looked at Joseph, his eyes burning with a final, desperate threat. "This isn't over, Evans. You have no idea who you've crossed." "I know exactly who I've crossed," Joseph replied, his voice flat. "A thief who wore a uniform. Take them away." The next morning, the headlines were explosive. "State Senator, former police captain arrested in massive land fraud scheme." The story detailed the years of intimidation, the Shell Corporation, and the planned resort. Former Sheriff Jones was implicated, and warrants were issued for his arrest. The rot that had festered in Oak Valley for years was finally being cut out into the light. In the county jail, Frank Miller sat in a cell, his knee throbbing, watching the news report on a small TV. He saw the images of Roberts and the senator being led away in handcuffs. He saw the interviews with a vindicated Mr. Henderson and a relieved David Chen. He saw a brief clip of Maria Evans standing beside her father at a press conference, looking not at the cameras, but at him, with a look of calm, unbreakable strength. Miller finally understood. He had been a pawn in a much bigger game, a blunt instrument for men who had now abandoned him completely. He had lost his job, his power, his freedom, and his reputation. All of it, he realized with a sickening clarity, started with a single arrogant act on a dusty road. He had slapped a young woman to put her in her place, and in doing so, he had brought his entire world crashing down. The farmer's daughter had buried him. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings that systematically dismantled the empire Roberts and Jones had built. Faced with an avalanche of evidence and a parade of credible witnesses, the powerful men crumbled. Senator Thompson, in a desperate bid for leniency, was the first to break. He gave a full confession, implicating former Sheriff Jones as the political muscle behind the rezoning scheme and Roberts as the architect of the land acquisition plan. Roberts, seeing his political cover evaporate, took a plea deal. He agreed to testify against Jones and provide a full accounting of the Oak Valley Development Group's finances in exchange for a reduced sentence. He would still serve hard time, but he avoided a life sentence on racketeering charges. His betrayal of his former boss was swift and absolute, a final self-serving act from a man who had only ever been loyal to himself. Frank Miller, isolated and abandoned by his former protectors, was the last domino to fall. He was facing a long list of charges, from the initial assault on Maria to the drunken rampage at Chen's Market. His lawyer made it clear his only hope was to plead guilty and throw himself on the mercy of the court. He was sentenced to 10 years in state prison, a broken man destroyed by his own arrogance. Oak Valley began to breathe again. The fear that had been a constant low-grade fever in the community finally broke. With Captain Davis now running operations and Calloway heading a newly empowered internal affairs unit, the department was undergoing a painful but necessary cleansing. For Joseph Evans, the legal victory was complete. He had pulled the weeds, burned the nest, and salted the earth. Justice had been served. But there was one loose thread. A name that had appeared on every document for the Shell Corporation, yet had remained in the shadows. Thomas Patterson, Roberts's brother-in-law, the money man. While the others were being arrested, Patterson had vanished. His assets were frozen, his accounts flagged, but the man himself was a ghost. Joseph knew it wasn't over. A man who stands to lose millions doesn't just walk away. One cool autumn night, a month after Roberts's sentencing, Maria was alone at the farmhouse. Her father was at a late-night county meeting, a normal part of his new life. The farm was quiet, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the rustle of wind through the dry cornfields. She sat on the porch, a book in her lap, a sense of peace settling over her that she hadn't felt in years. The fight was over. They had won. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, the soft crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, but with the engine and headlights off. Someone was coasting in, trying to be silent. Her heart leaped into her throat. She quietly stood up, slipping back into the shadows of the porch, her eyes straining to see into the darkness. A dark, unfamiliar sedan rolled to a stop about 50 yards from the house, near the old wooden barn. A man got out. He was tall and wore a dark suit, looking utterly out of place. He moved with a nervous, frantic energy, pulling 2 large gasoline cans from his trunk. It was Patterson. She recognized him from a photo in her father's case files. He wasn't a thug like Miller. He was a businessman, a man who moved money, not muscle. But tonight, his face was pale with sweat, his eyes wild with the desperation of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. Maria didn't scream. She didn't run for the phone. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Anger is a powerful tool if you know how to aim it. Her anger was now a cold, clear focus. This man was here to finish it. He was going to try and burn their legacy, the very land they had fought to protect. She slipped silently off the porch and moved along the side of the house, using the shadows as cover. She watched as Patterson began splashing gasoline on the dry timber of the old barn, the fumes acrid on the night air. He was clumsy, frantic, spilling as much on the ground as on the walls. Maria knew she couldn't take him head on, but she knew this land better than anyone. She knew its secrets. She circled around the back of the barn, her feet silent on the soft earth. She remembered the old irrigation valve for the north field, located right behind the barn. It was a heavy cast-iron wheel that controlled the main water line from the pump house. During the dry season, the pressure in those pipes was immense. Patterson finished emptying the first can and fumbled in his pocket for a lighter. The metallic click as he flicked it open sounded like a gunshot in the silence. A small flame bloomed, casting a demonic glow on his face. Just as he bent to touch the flame to the gasoline-soaked wood, Maria put all her strength into turning the heavy iron wheel. The valve groaned in protest, then gave way. A powerful jet of high-pressure water erupted from a leaky joint in the pipe right next to Patterson, dousing him and the side of the barn in a cold, shocking torrent. He screamed, stumbling back as the flame was extinguished, and he was soaked in a mixture of water and gasoline. The shock and the cold stunned him. He dropped the lighter and stared into the darkness, trying to understand what had just happened. "Get off my land," Maria's voice cut through the night, steady and hard as iron. Patterson spun around. He could just make out her silhouette standing 20 feet away, her hand still on the valve. "You!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with rage and disbelief. "You're the one who started all this. The farmer's daughter! He lunged for the tire iron he had left by his car, but he had forgotten about the gasoline he had spilled on the ground. His expensive leather shoes slipped on the slick, muddy patch. He went down hard, his head cracking against a rock on the edge of the driveway. He lay still, groaning. Headlights swept across the scene as Joseph's truck roared up the driveway, followed closely by a patrol car. He had gotten a bad feeling at the meeting and had called Calloway to follow him home. He leaped out of the truck, his gun drawn, and took in the scene. The reek of gasoline, the soaked and groaning man on the ground, and his daughter, standing tall and unharmed, a silent guardian of her home. Joseph holstered his weapon and walked over to Maria, his eyes filled with a fierce pride. He put a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad," she said, her voice completely calm. She looked down at the pathetic, whimpering man being cuffed by Calloway. "He thought this was our weakness." She gestured to the barn, the fields, the dark earth. "He didn't understand. It's our strength." 6 months later, spring had come to Oak Valley. The oppressive, fearful haze of the past seemed to have lifted with the winter cold, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. The sun felt warmer, the air cleaner. Change was visible everywhere. On the road leading to the Evans farm, a new sign had been hammered into the earth. It read, Oak Valley Community Land Trust, SATU 2024. The land that Roberts and his cronies had stolen was now in the process of being returned. Through a complex civil forfeiture case, the state had seized the assets of the Oak Valley Development Group. Instead of auctioning the land off to the highest bidder, a new initiative, championed by Joseph and argued passionately by Maria at county meetings, was putting the land into a trust. The original families, like the Garcias and the Hendersons, were given the first right to reclaim their properties, with legal and financial assistance from the county. Mr. Henderson was back on his porch, but now he wasn't just rocking. He was supervising his son and grandson as they repaired the very fence Maria had been mending that fateful day. He waved as Maria's truck drove by, a genuine, fearless smile on his face. The Garcia family had moved back into their grandfather's house, and the sound of laughter and the smell of barbecue once again filled their yard on weekends. David Chen's market was thriving. The community, in a show of silent, powerful support, had rallied around him after Miller's attack. His front window was new, the displays were restocked, and his business had never been better. His daughter had been accepted to the State University on her own merits, and a small, framed photo of her in a graduation cap sat proudly on the counter. The Oak Valley Police Department was a different place. Chief Joseph Evans was still the chief, but he was also still Joseph the farmer. He divided his time between his office and his land, believing that you couldn't police a community you weren't a part of. Captain Davis was a firm but fair second-in-command, and Calloway's Internal Affairs Unit had earned a reputation for being thorough and impartial. The good old boys network was gone, replaced by a sense of professionalism and accountability that was slowly earning back the community's trust. Frank Miller was a name that was rarely spoken. He was serving his sentence in a medium-security prison upstate, his knee permanently damaged, his spirit broken. Roberts was in a federal penitentiary, his sentence extended after Patterson, facing his own long list of charges, including attempted arson, gave up every last detail of the financial crimes to save himself. Former Sheriff Jones and Senator Thompson were awaiting trial, their political careers and reputations in ruins. The system they had manipulated for so long had finally, irrevocably, turned on them. One bright Saturday afternoon, Joseph stood on his porch, watching Maria. She wasn't mending fences anymore. She was at a long trestle table set up in the yard, surrounded by Mr. Henderson, Mr. Garcia, and the heads of the other families who had been wronged. Spread out before them were maps, deeds, and legal documents. Maria, who had discovered a fierce passion for advocacy and law, was helping them navigate the complexities of the land trust. She was no longer just the farmer's daughter. She was a community leader, a fighter who had found her voice not in shouting, but in organizing, in building, in healing. She looked up and caught her father's eye, a warm smile passing between them. The single act of violence on the dusty road had started a fire, but it hadn't just been a fire of vengeance. It had become a cleansing fire, burning away the rot and leaving behind fertile ground for something new to grow. Joseph leaned against the porch railing, a rare sense of peace settling over him. He had sought justice for his daughter, but in the process, a whole community had found its voice. The vengeance had been the spark, but the justice was the harvest. And here in Oak Valley, the fields were finally beginning to bloom. He knew the work wasn't over. The fight for fairness and dignity was a constant act of tending the soil, of pulling new weeds before they could take root. But for the first time in a long time, he felt the warmth of the sun on his face and knew with absolute certainty that they had won more than just a battle. They had won back their home. This story began with a single brutal act of disrespect on a dusty road, a slap that was meant to reinforce a corrupt order, to silence and intimidate. But it did the exact opposite. That sound didn't echo into silence. It became a call to arms. It ignited a fire for justice that spread from one family to an entire community. This story is a testament to the idea that courage isn't always the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the quiet, unyielding resolve to stand your ground on the land you call home, to look a bully in the eye and refuse to break. Maria and her father Joseph didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for their neighbors, for their shared history, and for the very soul of their county. They proved that one family, armed with the truth and an unbreakable will, can meticulously dismantle a corrupt system that seemed untouchable. The powerful men like Roberts, Miller, and Thompson, who saw ordinary people as weak, as mere obstacles to be removed for profit, discovered far too late that they weren't dealing with victims. They were dealing with roots that ran too deep and were too entangled with the community to ever be pulled out. We watched this intricate plan for justice unfold, but what do you think was the single most powerful moment in this story? Was it the chilling reveal in the briefing room, when Miller and Roberts realized the quiet farmer they had dismissed was now their new boss? Was it the raw courage of David Chen, a man pushed to his limit, who decided to fight back against Miller with nothing but a fire extinguisher? Or was it that final, brilliant confrontation at the barn where Maria, using her intimate knowledge of her own land, single-handedly stopped the final, cowardly act of revenge? At what point did you know for certain that the old guard had lost? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement and your perspective help us bring more stories like this to you. Stories where the underdog doesn't just bark, but bites back with strategy and strength. Ultimately, what makes this story so satisfying is the evolution of the fight. It starts as a father's focused, cold-blooded quest for vengeance, but it transforms into something far greater. True vengeance, we see in the end, isn't just about punishment. It's about rebuilding. It's about taking the broken pieces of a community and creating something stronger, something better. The Oak Valley Community Land Trust is the ultimate proof of this, a powerful symbol that the very land that was the object of greed and the source of so much pain could become the foundation for healing and shared prosperity. Joseph Evans didn't just clean house, he empowered his community to lay a new foundation, one built on the principles of accountability and mutual respect he had learned from working the earth. And Maria, who started this journey with a stinging cheek and a silent burning fury, refused to remain a victim. She transformed that personal pain into public power, becoming a voice for those who had been silenced for far too long. Her journey reminds us that the deepest wounds can often lead to the greatest strength, and that the fight for what's right, while difficult and dangerous, is always a fight worth having. The story of Oak Valley is a powerful lesson that corruption thrives in silence and in fear. It preys on the dangerous belief that ordinary people are powerless against an entrenched system. But as we saw, when one person, then another, and then another decides they are tired of being afraid, that's when the foundation of that corrupt world begins to crack and crumble. It wasn't just Joseph's badge that brought down Roberts and his cronies. It was the combined courage of Mr. Henderson, David Chen, the Garcia family, and all the others who chose to speak their truth. Justice isn't just one person's fight. It's a chorus of voices rising together, becoming too loud to ignore. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of justice and resilience. We pour our hearts into finding and telling these stories, and we hope this one resonated with you as much as it did with us. If you believe in the power of community and the fundamental importance of standing up against injustice, no matter the odds, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more emotional and empowering stories. Your support is the fuel that keeps our community growing. And for those of you who have been with us from the very beginning, who felt the sting of that slap and the profound triumph of that final victory, we see you. We deeply appreciate you. Let us know you made it all the way by commenting, "I watched until the end" below. Your dedication means the world to us. Don't go anywhere just yet. There's another powerful story of justice waiting for you right now on the screen. Click on the video you see for another tale of unexpected heroes and the incredible moments when the scales are finally balanced. We'll see you there.